My husband forgot his phone at home. I wasn't going to touch it. But it kept ringing, same number 7 times. I finally picked up. The voice on the other end said 3 words that made me sit down on the floor. I have not been the same woman since. The phone was on the kitchen counter, face down, next to his coffee mug that still had a ring of dried Maxwell House at the bottom. I noticed it the second I walked back inside after watching his truck pull out of the driveway. That was 7:14 in the morning. I know the exact time because I'd been checking the clock obsessively for 3 weeks, ever since I started noticing things didn't add up. I didn't touch it. That was my rule. I wasn't that woman. I'd told myself that 100 times over 14 years of marriage. You don't go through his phone, Diane. You trust him. You built something together and you don't tear it down with suspicion. So I left it there and went to get the laundry going. We had a system. Tuesdays were whites, Thursdays were darks. Marcus had been particular about that since we first moved into the house on Elmwood Drive in Dayton. Back when we thought owning a 3-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood was the finish line. Back when we still talked about things like vacations and maybe a dog someday. The first call came at 7:31. I heard it from the laundry room. That specific buzz pause that meant someone was calling, not texting. I didn't move. It stopped after 4 rings. I sorted the whites. Pulled his undershirts and my cotton socks apart. Found a receipt in his front pocket from a Chevron station on Route 35. The one that was 20 minutes in the wrong direction from his job at the distribution warehouse. I stood there looking at it. February 14th. Valentine's Day. He told me he worked a double that day and couldn't get away. I'd eaten a frozen lean cuisine and watched the tail end of a Hallmark movie and told myself I was fine with it because we weren't big on holidays anymore and that was okay. That receipt sat in my palm. Chevron. $8.43. Probably just gas and a coffee. There were 100 explanations. I put it on top of the washing machine and went to make myself breakfast. The second call came while I was scrambling eggs. Same buzz pause. I turned down the burner and stared at that phone on the counter. It stopped. I finished cooking. The third and fourth calls came within 10 minutes of each other, both before 9 o'clock. I was at the kitchen table by then, not eating, just sitting with my coffee going cold in front of me, staring at the phone like it was something alive. Because whatever it was doing, it felt alive. It felt urgent. It felt like something that was not supposed to be in my house. I almost called Marcus. I almost picked up my own phone, the little cracked screen Samsung I'd been meaning to get replaced for 8 months, and dialed him and said, "Hey, your phone's here, someone keeps calling you." That would have been the normal thing. The trusting wife thing. I didn't do it. I sat there. I waited. The 5th call came at 9:47. The 6th at 10:02. By the time the 7th one started buzzing at 10:19, something in my chest had gone completely still. Not calm. So, there's a difference. Calm means you're at peace. Still means you've already decided. I picked it up. The screen read K, with a little pink heart emoji next to the letter. Just K. Just one letter and that pink heart, and I remember thinking, that's not a contact you save like that unless the name means something you don't want anyone else to see. Unless you've thought about what it would look like if someone found it. I answered. There was a pause on the other end. Maybe 2 seconds. Then a woman's voice, low and careful, said, "He told me." I sat down on the floor. Not because my legs gave out. Because I made the choice to sit, the way you make the choice to not run when you've already been hit. I lowered myself down and put my back against the cabinet under the sink, and I held that phone against my ear and I waited. She didn't say anything else right away. I could hear her breathing. I could hear something in the background, maybe a TV, maybe a ceiling fan. I tried to picture where she was. What her kitchen looked like. Whether she was sitting down too. "Who is this?" I finally said. "My name is Kendra." Her voice didn't waver. She sounded like a woman who had prepared for this call. "I've been seeing Marcus for 2 years. And I'm pregnant." The floor was cold through my jeans. I remember that. I remember the specific coldness of it and how I pressed my hand flat against the tile and felt the grout lines under my fingers and focused on that texture because it was the only thing in the world that made sense right then. 2 years. Our daughter Aaliyah had just started middle school 2 years ago. 2 years ago, Marcus and I had driven to his mother's house in Columbus for Thanksgiving and held hands in the car on the way back because we'd had a good day and it felt like something worth holding on to. 2 years ago, I had renewed our renter's insurance and added his name to my gym membership and bought him a birthday cake from Kroger with the little sugar roses he liked and written "my person" on a card that I meant with everything I had. 2 years. You still there? Kendra asked. Yeah, I said. I'm here. I don't know why I didn't hang up. Looking back, I still don't fully understand it. But there was something in her voice that wasn't what I expected. She wasn't triumphant. She wasn't afraid. She sounded like a woman who was also on a floor somewhere trying to figure out what came next. He doesn't know I'm calling, she said. What do you want from me? Nothing. I want you to know. She paused. Because he told me last week that he was leaving you. That it was already done. That you two had been over for years. And I believed him. Another pause. Your daughter texted him happy birthday last Saturday. He told me it was a niece. I closed my eyes. Aaliyah had made him a card on her own, cut construction paper and drawn a cake with markers, and Marcus had left it on the kitchen table for 3 days before I finally put it in the junk drawer. He's not leaving me, I said. My voice came out flat and certain in a way I didn't recognize. I know that now, she said. We were quiet for a moment. How far along are you? I asked. 11 weeks. I opened my eyes and looked at the ceiling. There was a small water stain near the light fixture that I'd been asking Marcus to look at since October. He kept saying he'd get to it. I'm sorry, I said, and I meant it, and that surprised me. I'm sorry you're in this. She made a sound that wasn't quite a laugh but wasn't crying either. I'm sorry too. After I hung up, I sat on that floor for a long time. I didn't cry right away. I just sat there with the phone in my lap and the washing machine running in the other room and the eggs I'd made getting hard and cold on the stove. I thought about a lot of things. I thought about the Chevron receipt. I thought about every time Marcus had been vague about his schedule, every time he'd stepped outside to take a call, every time I'd asked if he was okay and he'd said, just tired, babe, and I'd believed him because I wanted to. I thought about who I'd been for 14 years. A woman who kept the house clean and raised a good kid and worked 3 days a week at the dental office on 5th Street and split the bills down the middle and never asked for more than what she was already getting because she told herself this was enough. A woman who'd convinced herself that fine and good were the same thing. I got up off the floor at 11:15. I washed the egg pan. I folded the whites. I picked Aaliyah up from school at 3:20 like I always did, and when she got in the car and said, "Hey Mom," and started telling me about some drama with her friend group, I listened to every word. I asked follow-up questions. I laughed when she laughed. She didn't need to know anything yet. When Marcus came home at 6:30, I had dinner on the table. Chicken thighs and rice, his favorite. He put his keys on the hook by the door and looked at the counter and said, "Oh, I forgot my phone." "Yeah," I said. "I noticed." He picked it up and checked the screen. I watched his face from the corner of my eye while I poured Aaliyah a glass of water. Something moved across his expression. A micro shift, a tightening around the jaw. And then it was gone and he sat down and said the chicken smelled good. "It does smell good," Aaliyah agreed. I sat across from him at a table I'd bought at a garage sale on Maple Street 7 years ago and eaten thousands of meals at and had 1,000 ordinary conversations across. And I watched him eat and I thought, I see you now. I see exactly who you are. And that was a strange kind of power. Not the kind that makes you feel good. The kind that makes you steady. I didn't say anything that night. I'd made a decision, but decisions like mine aren't announced. They're carried out. I started that week. I called my friend Rochelle, who'd gone through her own divorce 4 years back and come out the other side with her name on a lease and a job she actually liked. I told her what happened without crying, just laid it out like a report, and she listened and then she said, "Okay. First thing, do you have your own bank account?" I didn't. Everything was joint. I'd thought that was a sign of trust. "Open one tomorrow," she said. "Don't move anything yet, just open it. And get a copy of your taxes from the last 3 years." I wrote it down on a notepad I kept in my nightstand, the same one I'd used to track Aaliyah's school schedule and grocery lists and appointment reminders. I added this new list to it without ceremony. Things I needed. Things I was owed. I talked to a lawyer named Patricia Odoms who had an office on Brown Street and who charged me $150 for an hour of her time that was worth every cent. She explained what 14 years of marriage meant legally in Ohio. She explained what joint property was and what marital assets were and what a man who worked at a warehouse earned in a year and what a portion of that might look like. She didn't make me feel pathetic. She made me feel like a person with a case. I didn't tell Marcus I'd seen her. He didn't ask. 3 weeks after the phone call, Kendra texted me. I'd saved her number under K in my own phone, which felt like a small private joke that no one else would ever understand. She texted, "Just wanted to say I'm keeping it." And I told him I'm not hiding anymore. I texted back, "Good." I don't know what they were going through on that side of things. It wasn't my problem to untangle. What I know is that 2 days after Kendra sent that text, Marcus came home from work, sat down on the couch and looked at me with the face of a man who had run out of places to hide. "I need to tell you something," he said. "Hey," I said. I was sitting across from him with a cup of tea and I didn't put it down. He told me. He told me about Kendra, about how it had started, about the pregnancy. He told me the story he'd probably been practicing, the one with the parts he wanted me to believe, the version where he was a man who'd made a mistake and was ashamed, but could we please try to figure this out because he loved his family. I let him finish. Then I said, "I know about Kendra. He called me the day you forgot your phone. 6 weeks ago." The color left his face. "I've already talked to a lawyer," I said. "I've already opened my own account. I've already started making plans." I picked up my tea. "What I need from you right now is honesty about the finances. Everything else we can go through attorneys." He sat there for a long time without saying anything. "You're serious," he finally said. "I have been for 6 weeks," I said. "There's a woman who lives 2 houses down from us, Greta Novak, who is 71 years old and tends the most beautiful garden in the neighborhood. She grows tomatoes and zucchini and flowers I can't name but stop to look at every time I walk past. I'd always admired the garden from a distance. Never stopped to talk. The Saturday morning after I told Marcus I wanted a divorce, I was walking to my car and Greta was outside deadheading her roses and she looked up and said, "You doing okay, hon?" I stopped. Nobody asks that question and means it. She was looking at me with clear blue eyes that had seen something, and I stood there on the sidewalk in my old Ohio State sweatshirt and I just said, "Honestly, not really." She nodded like that was reasonable. "Come have coffee sometime," she said. "My door is open." I went the next day. I sat in her kitchen with its yellow curtains and its smell of soil and lemon dish soap and I told her the short version and she listened without any expression that made me feel like a cautionary tale. She told me about her own first marriage, which had ended in 1981, and how she'd moved to Dayton with $40 and a bag of clothes and built herself up piece by piece. "The thing nobody tells you," she said, "is that after the terrible part there's a clearing, like after a storm. And that clearing is yours." I thought about that a lot. The clearing. Aaliyah found out in April. We sat down with her together, Marcus and I, in the living room with the TV off and the 3 of us on the couch that we'd bought when she was 4, and we told her as gently and as honestly as we could. She cried. She asked if it was because of her. I told her no without hesitating and I meant it and I held her for a long time. Later, alone with me, she said, "Mom, did he cheat?" She was 11. She was smarter than we gave her credit for. I didn't lie to her. I said, "Yes. And that's between your dad and me. But it doesn't change how much he loves you." She was quiet for a while. Then she said, "Are you going to be okay?" I almost cried then. Almost. I held it together because she needed me to. "Yeah, baby," I said. "I really am." The divorce took 7 months. Not dramatic, not a courtroom fight, just paperwork and negotiation and 2 adults who had once loved each other agreeing in the end on the terms of untangling. Marcus moved into an apartment in Kettering. Kendra had her baby in September, a boy. I don't know the baby's name. I don't need to. I stayed in the house on Elmwood Drive. My name was on the mortgage too, had been from the beginning, and Patricia Odoms made sure that counted for something. I got a part-time second job doing bookkeeping for a small dental practice. Turns out working the front desk of a dentist's office for 6 years means you understand the business side better than you think. Dr. Simmons told me I was sharp and gave me 15 hours a week and a real salary, not the hourly I'd been making. Rochelle came over on the first weekend after Marcus moved his last boxes out. She brought wine and a rotisserie chicken from Kroger and we sat on the back porch and watched the sun go down over the neighbor's fence and she said, "How does it feel?" I thought about it for a real moment. The house was quieter than it had ever been. Aaliyah was at her dad's for the weekend, which was new and strange and something all 3 of us were still learning. The garden next to the porch was just dirt that I hadn't done anything with yet. But it was my dirt. My porch. My quiet. Like the beginning of something, I said. I planted tomatoes the following spring. Greta helped me. She showed me how deep to put the roots and what the soil needed and how to be patient about things that grow slowly. We talked across the fence on Sunday mornings and I started keeping a little journal again, the first time since I was a teenager, just writing down what was true from one day to the next. There were bad days. Days I sat in the car in the parking lot of the Kroger and cried so hard I couldn't see. Days I missed the version of my marriage that I now understood had never fully existed, the one I'd built in my head and called real. Days when Aaliyah was at Marcus's and the house was so quiet it felt like a held breath. But there were other days. Days I walked into Patricia Odom's office and signed my name on something that was mine alone. Days I sat across from Dr. Simmons and understood that I was valued for something I hadn't even known I was good at. Days Greta knocked on my door with zucchini from her garden and stayed for an hour and made me feel like a neighbor, a person, a woman with a whole life ahead of her. That phone call on the kitchen floor changed me in ways I'm still figuring out. Not because a stranger told me my marriage was a lie, but because of what I did next. Because I got up. Because I didn't perform any version of fine I didn't feel. Because I let myself be angry and afraid and unsure and I kept moving anyway. I used to think the worst thing that could happen to me was the thing I was most afraid of. Turns out the worst thing I'd done was spend years being afraid of something that was already happening. Living small to keep the peace. Calling it love when it was just quiet surrender. I am not the same woman who sat on that kitchen floor in January. That woman was waiting for her life to get easier on its own. This woman knows that easier isn't the goal. Real is the goal. Honest is the goal. Awake. I still drive past that Chevron on Route 35 sometimes. I don't know why I don't take a different road. Maybe I just don't need to avoid it anymore. It's just a gas station. It's just a receipt. It's just a thing that happened on a road that got me here. And here is mine.